enlightening, inspirational, powerfully refining, and unapologetically controversial. Conversations with the Royal Empress. The entire world knows the secret of who you are. Now is the time to step into your queendom and become the Royal Empress that you're meant to be. One woman at a time. Conversations with the Royal Empress. Now Akila, she's the analytical Empress. Akima, she's the Empress that will challenge you. Now, straighten up your crown and be elevated through conversations. Conversations with the Royal Empress.
Conversations with the Royal Empress. I am Dr. Hakima, and joining me are my fellow co-host and co-founder of Royal Empress, Akila, and our two guest empresses, Brandy Smart and Dr. Steffie Turner. Dr. Turner is our Royal Empress mental health professional. Today's topic is, what are HBCUs and how do they serve the Black community? I just want to note that our two guests, Brandy Smart and Dr. Turner, are also HBCU alumni. Ladies, I'm so excited about this topic. I've been wanting to do this for a while. However, I've never gone to HBCU. I've always wanted to. I want to steer my children there, but I thought this would be a very good topic. One of the things I do before we start our topic, I do want to go over the definitions because I don't want to assume that our listeners know. HBCU stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. The Higher Education Act of 1965 defines historically Black colleges and universities as a historically Black college or university that was established prior to 1964 and whose primary mission was and is to educate Black people or Black Americans. We'll also use the term PWI, which represents predominantly white institutions. So you will hear us say HBCUs and PWIs in the conversation. Okay? One of the first things I want to talk about is the myths of HBCUs. Who would like to address that?
Well, this is Akila, and I'm not going to address any myths, but before we get started, what schools did our guest co-host attend? We can shout out those HBCUs.
Okay, Brandy, go ahead and start us off with that.
I attended Grambling State University and Texas Southern University.
Okay. Shout out to Grambling State. And shout out to Texas Southern University. Dr. Turner, what HBCU did you attend?
Okay, I attended the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, and I believe it's the 13th HBCU, Historically Black College, that was created.
Okay. Now, I've heard so many myths about HBCUs. I've heard some positive things about HBCUs. But would you all like to share your experiences and what made you want to go to an HBCU and what myths you heard or what positive things you heard to make you want to attend a HBCU over a predominantly white institution?
Well, I can go first. My experience growing up, I lived in predominantly white neighborhoods, and I always went to predominantly white schools. And so I wanted to go to an HBCU in order to have the Black community experience, the Black college experience. And I also grew up in a time where Black colleges were heavily promoted. So like the Cosby Show or Living Single, Martin, everybody would wear the HBCU, the hoodies and the outfits. And I grew up watching A Different World. So that was what college looked like to me. And I felt that because I was African American, that's where I should go to college. And so it was very important for me to have that experience.
It's profound because we don't really have those images in front of us right now as far as the promotion of the HBCUs as far as fashion, because I think the company that was ahead of those that was out there promoting that or creating that was African Alliance. something, African American Alliance, and AACA or something like that. And they were the makers of that particular, those sweatshirts that Martin Lawrence used to wear and Queen Latifah used to wear.
I grew up in a predominantly Black community and experienced a lot of racism very early with the education system. So I wanted to go to HBCU primarily for safety reasons and because I felt it would be more nurturing and more protective. And it turned out to be just that.
So what myths did you guys hear before you actually got there that you found out wasn't even true, that it just didn't apply?
That it doesn't prepare us for success. And that wasn't true. If the education wasn't a quality education, and that wasn't true.
I can't say that I knew of any myths before I entered college, but I can say that when I arrived, I thought that I was not going to like it. I was immediately just unhappy, and it may be because of my age or because of transition or because it was my first time really being alone, but a lot of maybe freshmen maybe are afraid or apprehensive. So just thinking that we wouldn't like it or we wouldn't enjoy it, and really falling in love with the school and with being there and feeling like it's family.
Now, for me, I was exposed to myths when I was looking to choose a college, and I was trying to explain to my parents that I wanted to go to HBCU. Well, of course, my parents were like, you can't go to HBCU. And a lot of the myths that was in their mind was basically was combined with the fears of when you send your children off to school, but also those myths of you can't get a quality education. It's not going to be a supportive environment for you. I want to mention an article that College Express wrote in October of 2014, and they listed some myths of what people think about HBCUs. And one of the myths is that you wouldn't get a first-rate education, but that has turned out to be false, because you both just reiterated that you got a quality education. Another myth also was you're not going to have a caring professional staff, and from what I've been reading or researching about HBCUs, that's not necessarily true. That the classes are not catered in a way that it would be supportive or educational for Black students, and from what I've read, that's not true as well. So there are some myths that's out there, and I don't know where they started from, who was behind it, and it could possibly just be a lack of understanding or just myths that's put out there about a white community that don't want to see Black people go to their own community. Because one of the myths that's also put out there is that you won't experience diversity at HBCU. Now, you all would be able to confirm that, but from what I've read is that there are diverse populations at HBCU. Even though the HBCUs are predominantly Black, there's still diverse cultures that attend the HBCUs as well. Can you all attest to that?
I would say Texas Southern University is the most diverse HBCU. It's in the center of Houston, so it's downtown, and we had one of the most diverse campuses. I would also like to address the fact that when people look at diversity, a lot of times they look at race. And although you may be at a school that's predominantly one race or another race, diversity comes in different forms. And so I know that just going to college in general, I encountered people from, all over the world, people from different cultures, people from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic standing, just being in an environment with your peers and your cohorts, but understanding and seeing how different we are, versus maybe one of the myths is that, going to HBCU, well, that myth is that there's no diversity and that you're going to be like people that are all just the same, and it's pretty much the opposite.
I was agreeing with you when she was mentioning diversity, and you actually touched on exactly what I was thinking, is that diversity is not just about race. One of the myths that I feel that I heard growing up was, well, why would you go to an all-Black school when that doesn't represent the real world, because you're not going to always work around Black people. You know, you're going to have to go out and you're going to have to associate with all of these different people. And that was one of the things that I remember hearing. But I will say that just my impression when I went to law school, I always felt, and it was something that I paid attention to, was that to me, the students who were in my class who went to HBCUs seemed to be far more confident and assured of themselves than did those of us who attended PWIs. That's just my opinion. But it was just something that I noticed and paid attention to, that they readily jump right into leadership roles. It was just something different that I saw in students that went to the HBCUs versus those who went to PWIs. And not saying that, you know, the people who go to predominantly white universities are not, you know, self-assured and confident and all of that stuff. But it was just something that I noticed about them, that, you know, when the professor asked a question, they would raise their hand quickly. Whereas, you know, many of us, you know how people are when you're in school and the professor says something, you shrinking down and hiding in the back of the classroom. And I didn't notice that with anybody that I knew that went to a HBCU at that particular time. So it was just an observation that I made. And so that myth of not preparing you to deal with the real world and be around others, I think that was blown out the water just from that experience, seeing them in that environment, and quite frankly, seeming to do even better than those who had always been in that environment.
I feel that maybe too much attention is paid to the color, you know, the color of our skin, or the, you know, the diversity, or, you know, that it's this race of people. But, you know, culturally, you know, we're all American, and it's not as much differences. But I know that HBCUs, and I feel like HBCUs, one of the biggest benefits is that they prepare you for the real world, actually. And it's kind of like a place where you mature, and where they want you to mature. And there's a focus on your self-development outside of just your academic development. You know, if you follow the, you know, academic rubric, you will learn the things that you need to learn. But HBCU does prepare you to be a leader. There's a focus on leadership. There's a focus on self-actualization. There's a focus on you understanding and realizing your importance in the world. And a lot of aspects just, and I probably can't even really point to what specifically there is. Of course, if you're in a sorority or a fraternity, they also prepare you, you know, just prepare you for adulthood, for the workforce, for life. But HBCUs definitely will help you in leadership roles.
Steffie, you wanted to address you had a question. I mean, something you wanted to address.
I forgot my other comment I was going to make, but one thing I wanted to mention was one of my experiences at HBCU about them preparing you for your career and going into the real world. And they taught me a lot of unwritten rules about, you know, life and the business world. One thing I noticed that they taught me was about basic etiquette. And this came from like the one of the admissions counselors. I was over at the admissions office, and I was sitting in my boyfriend's, my son's father's lap, and doing registration. And she came from behind the counter and she scolded me. She was like, "If you don't get out of that boy's lap." And I was so embarrassed because I felt I was away from home. I could do this, but she was sort of like an extended family member. She said, "You don't do that. You don't sit in no man's lap." And so I knew, okay, I can't do that. So I had to, you know, acclimate when I came to that building. Then I had other professors, or they would tell me stuff like, you know, you don't chew gum, you know, with your mouth open, or you don't wear this, or you don't wear that. And so it just taught me basic things. And we would do like, you know, basic mock interviews for getting a job. And they would just be honest about how we were perceived by the larger society, about how we spoke and did certain things. So we got socialized two ways, you know, being Black, and then also socialized to function in the larger society. So they just kind of kept it real with us. And I appreciated that.
Wow. You know, it's interesting
I
that
could
you
agree.
mentioned that, because when I was trying to find with my oldest, she graduated a year early, and we were looking at, talking to different schools at a college fair. And it was
Mm-hmm.
this one particular college fair was the HBCU college fair. So it's all HBCUs there that was in attendance. And one conversation I had with a recruiter from Grambling State, and I told her, I said, yes, my daughter is going off a year earlier. And she said, oh, we have a program. I'm sorry, this wasn't Grambling. This was actually Xavier. She said that we have a program for children who are coming in young. It's a program where they are assigned to a teacher who would be like a mentor, but this was some person that would check in with them, and they was checking in with them emotionally, socially, and academically. And I thought, wow, none of the PWI schools that I talked to even had anything remotely close to that. And I said, wow. And I'm not to say that any other HBCU didn't have that. It was just a conversation. It was sparked in a conversation that I had with one recruiter, and my concern with her going away from home, and she's not even 18 yet. And I thought, wow. And I mean, that right there is what made me see the value of a HBCU, being more concerned with the emotional state of being of our children. And I was just so impressed with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I felt like, and that's probably the overarching, like the biggest benefit I would say is that I had a secondary parenting. I felt that all of the professors, all of the staff, everyone there, they treated us as if we were their family. If we were their, nieces or nephews or little cousins or daughters or grandchildren, like that's how they approached us. And they didn't necessarily only focus on academics, but they focused on, like I know on our campus we couldn't, girls weren't allowed in the boy dorms. I had a similar experience where I had a hickey one time, and I walked
Did you
past the
say
professor, and
hickey? You said hickey?
yes, yes. And I walked past the professor, and he stopped me, and he was like, "That's not what you're here for,"
Ooh.
And they always just made sure that they didn't. They felt. I think that they felt a responsibility to us as beings versus just a job, and this is, I'm just educating people. I just teach this subject. It was a very holistic, well-rounded family atmosphere and experience.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That is awesome. Man. Now that's a powerful story right there, because would you have gotten that if you went somewhere else? Possibly not.
Mm-mm.
I
I
want
don't
to.
think I would have I don't think I would have went on to become a doctor had I started out in a predominantly white institution. Because when I went to HBCU, because I initially went to be a nurse, and then, but my professors and then the other people around me, they saw I had, greater potential, so they put that in me and they fostered that. So had I not went to HBCU, probably just stopped in nursing, which is a nice field. So they gave me the courage and the motivation. And the one thing I want to point out about HBCU, it gives students a lot of self-esteem. And then, according to the research, self-esteem is a major proponent in motivation, which is a major proponent in learning. So if you feel good about yourself, you'll believe you can do certain things. And if your self-esteem is low, or if it's hampered, you may feel you are undeserving of a degree or undeserving of a particular profession, and that contributes to high dropout rate.
Wow. That's
I know
awesome.
our motto at Grambling State, our motto was where everybody is somebody.
Say
Mm-hmm.
that
So
again. Say that again.
that was where everybody is somebody.
Okay. Okay.
That was our school motto, and it was said constantly all day, all the time. And that is definitely true. It did give me a lot of self-confidence and self-esteem. I know that I flourished when I went to college. When maybe in high school I was a little shy, or didn't feel necessarily that I fit in with certain teams or different things that I wanted to do. When I was at the HBCU, I was pushed to do everything, and I was involved in so many different activities and programs. And I even had one of my professors see also see that potential in me and know that I would do well. And she put me into, I went to a medical school program every summer, and she made sure I went into the program. It wasn't something that I found. They would present you with opportunities on a regular basis and encourage you to, you need to go in this program, you need to be in this, you need to do this. These are the, steps you should take, and just offering that opportunity and making sure you knew that you were capable.
That's
And
right.
at my school, in my psychology program, even after I graduated, my professors and then the students that came after me, they kept up with what I was doing. They always checked in, and kind of was like my cheerleaders all the way through. So it was like an extended family.
That's awesome.
So
I also went to
I would have owed that to them too. So I couldn't have stopped if I wanted to.
So they would have been on you, huh?
So they had an expectation. And then in Arkansas at that time, they only had, I think it was maybe like at the time, and like in the 90s, might have been like 4 Black psychologists. So you didn't go on to get doctorate degrees in psychology in Arkansas. And I think the 4 people that did get them, we all had to leave the state to get the doctorate. So, we were just trying to increase our numbers too for Black mental health professionals.
I want to read something that from the research that I found when I was looking for, schools to recommend to my daughter before she went on. She ended up choosing a predominantly white institution, but there was some information that I've learned. It educated me, and I was like, wow, I wish I would have known this years ago. But I want to talk about how important HBCUs are to the STEM majors. And one of the articles that I found in my research was they had the top 10 schools listed, and I want to name those. The 10th one was Fort Valley State University. Say what the number 9th one is. The number 9th one, the school that came in 9th place was Morgan State University. The school that came in 8th place was Prairie View A&M University in Texas. Norfolk State University was number 7. Alabama State University came in 6th place. 5th place was Jackson State University. 4th place was Howard University. 3rd place, Alabama A&M. 2nd place, Florida A&M University. And coming in at number 1 was North Carolina A&T State. And they came in 1st place. Now, it changes I found that it changes per year. But this was about 2018 when I discovered this article. So those numbers and those schools may have changed in late 2018 and to now. But from the research, that was something that I was very, very impressed with, that knowing that if your children go off to an HBCU, they are not going to lose the quality of education when it comes to STEM majors. Being that there's a push for STEM majors right now in high schools, our HBCUs are well equipped to really prepare our children to be successful in those STEM majors. And I don't want to assume that our listeners know what STEM is, but STEM is the science, it's mathematics, it's the technical field. So if any student is looking to go into computer science or medicine, this is particularly the majors that they would have would be STEM majors.
I was when I entered college, I was a biology major, and the program that I attended was at Meharry Medical College, which is the African American medical school, and so I was in the realm of STEM, like that was my major. So I was definitely given the tools necessary to succeed, and the program that I attended in the summer was actually an additional support to prepare us for what we were learning in school. So we would basically go off in the summer to prepare us for the following year. So we would get a head start and then also, go over anything we may not have learned in high school as far as STEM. So there was a big focus and a big push for STEM education while I was there, and an encouragement, to go into the medical field. So it was very much supported.
Wow. What about you, Steffie? What do you think about the STEM majors and just the aspect that
Now,
HBCUs add, the
what is the term?
dynamics.
Now, what is the term? What are you saying? You could call it, what is it?
STEM was science, technology, and mathematics. The science majors, like biology, chemistry, mathematics. Um, when I'm saying STEM, I'm referring to those because a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
schools, when they want to categorize those students that want to go to school for engineering or biology, when they want to major in engineering or biology or computer science, they're being categorized under STEM. As you know, and in high schools, they're even doing that now. It's this push to get more Black students in STEM majors in colleges.
Mm-hmm.
But then just in my research, I found that, I was thinking, oh, okay, even I was thinking that way, but I'm sure that some others was thinking, okay, well, when you're thinking to put your child in a particular school that's good for science, you're going to go off what you heard, and that's going to vary.
Yeah.
That's going to vary depending on what region of America you live in. So you live in the Midwest, you're going to be thinking schools like, Northwestern or Michigan or Indiana. But I mean, if you're on the West Coast, of course, you may be thinking UCLA or whatever. But just in my research, I found that, okay, those schools might come to mind, but there are schools where our students can thrive and be in those majors and really excel many of the white students that's at the predominantly white institutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
when I think about, now that I know what that means, for example, like when I was doing my research too, I didn't know that Xavier University, which is in New Orleans, they graduate a high number of Black doctors, and they only have about 3,000 students, but they lead the nation in Black graduates who eventually complete medical school. And so, in order to be a medical doctor, you got to take a lot of math, science, and chemistry. And so, that school, I think it's like the number one school in preparing Blacks to go on to become medical doctors, that enroll in medical school and actually graduate.
I had I came across an article, and they talked about the top HBCUs as far as production of medical school applicants. And the article was 7/23/2018. And this came out of the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. So it came out of Journal. The number one, the school that was ranked as number one as far as producing the most Black students, medical school applicants, was Howard. Xavier came in at number 2, but I do remember reading that a couple of years ago, Xavier was number 1, but like I said, per year it could change. Number 3 was listed was Spelman. Number 4 was Florida A&M. After that was Oakwood University, then Hampton, then Prairie View A&M, and then Tuskegee was what was listed in that particular journal article.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really impressive.
Exactly, and it's one thing that I did notice when I was reading about Xavier, what made them so successful, and I was looking at what is the variable, and they said that that one of the main variables was it produced an environment that fostered cooperative student environment free of racial hostility. While you in a program like a medical program is very competitive, very stressful. So you would want an environment that didn't have the extra element of stress of being stereotyped because of your, of racism or being looked down upon because of your skin color. And they said that was a major variable in them having such a successful, rate of students graduating from medical school.
That's interesting. You said that. I mean, like you both have attended both schools. So you attended a HBCU, and as further education, you also attended a predominantly white institution. What would you say your experiences were from either one? Because you would assume that you would deal with more racism at the predominantly white institution, but at a HBCU you wouldn't. So could you guys expound on the differences of how attending both and how one was more nurturing than the other? You kind of touched on it, Steffi, but if you all would like to address that.
When I went to the predominantly white schools, of course I was typical token Black person because they accepted 25 applicants out of, I think, about 500 and something that year. So it was a lot of pressure, and I was the Black person. So, you know, I had a lot of anxiety because I was the only Black person. You were singled out, and every time something came up about race, I had to be the spokesperson for my whole race about that. And it was during the time of the O.J. Simpson trial, so I was just stressed out going to class because I'm like, oh my God, I got to know something about this. Got to say the right thing about domestic violence. I got to be politically astute. So it was just a lot of pressure because, you know, I couldn't just be just a regular student. If they brought up anything related to, you know, race and politics related to Blacks, I had to have something to say. Or if I didn't, they would you know, I would be frowned upon as not actively participating. And sometimes I didn't know the answer because I can't speak for all Black people. So it was pressure in that way. And then you couldn't always say how you really felt because you know, you wanted to fit in and also to graduate too. You didn't want to look, can't be too radical. You can't be openly radical in your thinking and be a psychologist. You have to conform. Until you get the degree, of course, then you can say what you want to, but it's just a lot of pressure.
The difference is I didn't have any sense of pressure when I was at the PWI, maybe because that was what I was used to. It was actually, my experience was more, it was just more patterned after what I grew up in. So I felt comfortable there. But I also had the experience of racism that I never really had experienced. I never really experienced racism in school when I was, you know, in elementary education or my secondary education. It wasn't until I did go to college that I did experience that, you know, white and Black racism. And it was a lot of differences where I could kind of get a reflection of kind of how it is in the real world. And I grew up watching a lot of movies on, you know, racism and movies from the civil rights era and seeing, you know, how people were treated, but it didn't reflect my real life experiences. I didn't see that in the neighborhoods I grew up in. And so when I went to college, all of the white fraternities and sororities had these big mansions and all these different opportunities for them. And then the Black students had a tree. So all the fraternities and sororities, they had this one tree that they could gather around. And there were times where they would hang nooses from the tree.
What?
And they would do things in a taunting way to the students. So me personally, I'm multiracial. So I'm awakening to the realization that I don't think that people, I can identify exactly what I am. People may think I'm Hispanic. They may think, you know, I'm mixed, or they think I'm this, or they think I'm that. So I can kind of navigate. But I was able to observe the racism that was there and the need and the necessity for the African American students to band together and be supportive of one another and kind of form their own, you know, entity or their own environment. They were always there for one another.
Wow. This makes me want to go back to school and just go to HBCU. That's what it makes me want to do. That's what I want to do. I want to go back to school and I want to go to HBCU, definitely. I want to shed light on the partnerships that HBCUs have that a lot of people may be unaware of. I know you all would be able to shed some light on it. But Brandy, you mentioned one of them, the partnership that Meharry College has with Tennessee State. I was reading something where students from Tennessee State could actually take classes at Meharry College, you know, to go towards their major. And I thought, wow, that's awesome. I mean, in a lot of predominantly white institutions, they may have opportunities, but you're competing with a large group of people. You mentioned earlier that you had you was presented with more opportunities at the HBCU than at the predominantly white institution. So
Yeah.
to me, the whole partnership that's going on in a lot of the HBCUs with corporations or with larger institutions is a benefit for anyone to go to it. One of the other partnerships I want to mention too is the partnership that Morgan State in Baltimore has with Johns Hopkins Hospital. So it's a lot of the HBCUs have opportunity to work in different hospitals, and it'd be more of like an internship. There are, I think it's like 3 or 4. I know Hampton is one of them that has a partnership, I think, with Duke University Medical School. So I mean, I've uncovered so many different partnerships that a lot of the HBCUs have for their aspiring doctors, I would say. So I've uncovered a lot of that, but that's just from the research that I come across. Brandy, can you or Steffi shed light on maybe some partnerships that I didn't mention? Because there are a lot of them. It's so many to mention, but from you all experiences, what you have witnessed or participated in.
Yeah. So I also worked at Texas Southern University. So I was an executive assistant to the deans in the Department of Public Affairs. So I witnessed so many partnerships, and it really was the central focus was to partner with other organizations to be able to provide the students with, continuing opportunities. So there were partnerships with local government. There were partnerships with the state. There were partnerships with colleges and high schools. So that was unique. We always were in partnership with recruiting, also with trying to get younger students involved, but making it so that they had additional opportunity, and also the growing area for online education. So a lot of partnerships to foster more online education, to give more students, that were necessarily traditional students, the opportunities to attend the university.
I want to talk a little bit about the notables or the accomplishment of HBCUs that go unnoticed, that's not reported in news that you hear every day. One in particular is Morgan State University. They had 100% in their nursing grads passing the boards. That's not in the news. You wouldn't even hear about that, but I just came across that article actually this week, and I thought, wow, that's very impressive. Also, there was 4 HBCU alumni that helped to revive the Black Bank revival. I don't know if you all have seen in social media this big push to support Black-owned banks. That whole Black Bank revival was done by HBCU alumni. Something else I found out this week as well is that HBCUs have produced 40% of Congress, of the Black professionals that are in Congress. One thing, Winston-Salem has been credited for being like one of the most social, I don't know if I can explain it right, but one of the most social HBCUs, and just the whole push of social mobility and social existence within their school. And to our listeners, do your research on HBCU. Just pick one and just Google them. You'd be surprised with what you are or what you're going to get as far as the information or what you're going to learn about these HBCUs.
Just what stuck out to me was Congress, since I was in the School of Public Affairs. That was an inspiration on a daily basis. I was in the Barbara Jordan, Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs, so every day just being reminded of Barbara Jordan and Mickey Leland. Politicians visited quite often to help develop partnerships and expose students to the legal profession. The law school at Texas Southern University, the Thurgood Marshall School of Law. And so a lot of alumni that went to these institutions were very instrumental in some of the major changes that have taken place in America as far as, racism and equality and education, education equality. So that stuck out to me. And it is very beneficial if you want to participate in certain areas, to be associated with the alumni. And any university you go to, whether it's a PWI or a HBCU, the alumni are very supportive. Because, of course, like the staff and the teachers, they want to see you succeed. They want to give you, you know, all the keys that they needed or wish that they had when they were students. So knowing who those notable people are that, you know, went to the university that you went to, it's great to know who they are and be able to reach out to them, because they welcome you with open arms, you know, and help you the best they possibly can.
I want to go off just briefly because we're talking about, because you mentioned Texas Southern. What are you thinking about these rumors about them trying to separate the law school from the university now? Have you heard about that?
Yes, I have.
You don't sound too happy about that.
Well, what it is so the law school is right across, it's the building adjacent to the School of Public Affairs, and the law school and the School of Public Affairs work very closely. So my perspective, I think, may be a little bit different than just someone aware of the university or having a different position or role in the university. So I understand, you know, a little bit of both sides. I was there when they transitioned from president, and understand a little bit of the challenges that the university is having as a whole. And I feel that the law school, you know, may want to just break away from maybe the challenges that I think have been going on for a period of time. It's a tense subject. It's an interesting matter. I'm not sure if it's happened anywhere else where a section of a school basically seceded from the other portion of the school. But I just would like to see how it works out, and I hope that, you know, they can come to agreements and come together and really work together, you know, aside from, you know, separating, and figure out what a solution would look like to continue the relationship. Because it's almost, you know, like a marriage, you know, different entities or bodies come together, and, you know, maybe they can, you know, find out what it is that needs to be modified, and, you know, modify those things, and the whole university flourishes.
Now, you know, I have to crack a joke because you said about a school succeeding. I'm like, well, it is Texas. You know, they tried to say.
That's a good one.
That's a Texas thing down there, boy. They be talking about separate for real. They like, look, we tired of y'all.
We will do it ourselves.
Wow. Steffi, do you have anything you would like to add as for the notables or regarding that?
Nobody that I know from my school, but, you know, I know like Oprah graduated from Tennessee State University, just near, you know, this is the next state over. So that was inspirational. And then we used to have like notables come to the campus a lot, like Jesse Jackson would come speak when I was there. So, you know, back in the 80s, I never met anybody famous, you know, until he was like the first famous person I'd ever seen. So,
you know, he went to North Carolina A&T, just to add to Arthur Toni Morrison, she went to Howard. Wanda Sykes went to Hampton. Samuel Jackson went to Morehouse. And of course, we know, many of us on this line knows that Mr. Farrakhan went to Winston-Salem. It's a lot more of famous celebrity people who have attended HBCUs. But that list is so long, so we can go on and on. But I just want to throw some celebrities out there that have gone there. And the celebrities that the world don't know about, all the people that we know that have attended HBCUs.
A lot of them send their children, too. And that was another thing that I noticed when I did go to an HBCU, and that may touch on one of the myths. I think that maybe only one of the myths that I might have been aware of was that that it's bad, you know, that it's like a bad school, it's maybe violence involved and things that people would correlate with, say, like an inner city school. And it was the total opposite. A lot of the students there were the children of, you know, a lot of different celebrities or people with a lot of African American like lineage and legacy go through HBCUs. So it was interesting to see that this stereotype that I was, just programmed by society to believe about African American people or Black people was just totally untrue.
You guys like to add about the obstacles that HBCUs are currently experiencing, and how the Black community can help eliminate those obstacles?
Funding is one of them. We can always use more money, and I think more graduates should become, active contributing alumni. I think that's a major thing.
Yeah, I would say cooperation. Level of increased cooperation, increased communication, and increased like transparency, like the ability to acknowledge what the problems are and what the challenges are, and not, acting as if they don't exist or that speaking on them are going to somehow produce negative effects, but just being able to openly acknowledge the issues that do exist and seek assistance for those. To figure out some solutions to go ahead and fix the challenges that they have.
Okay. Well, thank you. As we get ready to close out this topic, I would like, I'll ask you to go first, Steffie. If you could just in one sentence say why someone should attend HBCU, and then after that, Brandy, I'll have you answer the question.
Because I think if you attend the HBCU, your chances of graduating rises tremendously if you attend HBCU. In a sentence.
I think that it's beneficial for students to choose HBCUs because they will receive a holistic approach to their education, and not only will they, be educated academically, but they will, be educated in terms of their maturity and psychologically, emotionally, and it's just a place to get a foundation and become grounded and rooted before you do go off into the real world. And it's a place to learn how to thrive.
You all mentioned the financial barriers that the HBCUs have, and one played out in the public, which was Bennett College. They was about to lose their accreditation, where they lost it, but they had to raise $8.5 million in order to keep from losing it. And I'm sorry, I forgot, it was $5 million. I'm sorry, but then they ended up raising 8.5 or close to 9 million, and still lost their accreditation. But that was just one of the financial barriers that HBCUs face every day. This particular time, it was played out on social media. It was played out in the public. That's one aspect of it. But as far as scholarships, what type of barriers do HBCUs face with as far as that?
Do you mean in terms of their financial funding and ability for students to get scholarships?
Yes.
Yeah. I can't address it from a standpoint of, I guess, like working in the interior to understand what the root of the problems are. But I know that there is a heavy burden to provide financial aid, and with more students needing financial aid, then of course there's more of a drain on whatever pot of funds that they do have. And one thing about an HBCU is that they do care about every student that comes, and they're going to do what they need to do, or do their best to make sure that you have somewhere to live while you're there and you are able to go to the university. So I think that also financially there has been a lot of mismanagement of funds in different ways, and I'm not sure why that has been, or what has caused that. But I think, like I said before, I think that getting help for the things that there are problems in is something that would be beneficial. Just working together and getting maybe hiring people that specifically come in to address some of the issues that they have would be great.
I think another thing probably would be marketing more about different scholarship opportunities, and then marketing to a wider array of potential applicants. I think that's a big deal. And I think like the younger generation now, I think very few of them are even aware of how many HBCUs we have that may be, in their own backyard. They may not even be aware of it. And so I think it needs to be more
It's interesting
marketing.
you said that. When you said that, it made me think of it. Kentucky State. I was not aware of Kentucky State, and the closeness, and proximity was Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and it's actually 4 hours from Chicago. So I actually Googled, the closest HBCUs to Chicago, and actually that's how I found out about Kentucky State. So when you said that, as far as marketing, you're right. See, people so used to hearing the Howards, the Florida A&Ms, but you don't hear about the Oakwood universities. You don't hear about the Kentucky States. You don't hear about many of those schools. What's that? The Paul Quinn College down in Texas. You don't hear about those unless you're actually doing the research, because there was HBCUs that prior to my research, I had never heard of, because my mind was so stuck on the marketing for Howard, for, Florida A&M, Spelman, Morehouse. That was where my mind was, because those were ones that I always heard. But just in the research, it was so many HBCUs that was uncovered me. I found out about Morgan State in the last 2 or 3 years. Didn't even know about it. Bowie State. I mean, there are so many other schools out there that we don't know about. So when you said about the marketing, it just really hit home to me personally, that I was able to find out about more HBCUs like Harris Stowe. I had never heard of that. I didn't know about Lincoln College in Missouri. There's 2 Lincolns, but I didn't know about it. So, and even just knowing where these colleges were even located, I didn't even know. So when you said that, I'm like, wow. I mean, that probably better marketing will also address the issue of low finances, because I think from the research that I got, don't quote me on it, but the HBCUs endowment is less than 4% or something of what the predominantly white institutions get. I know it's a very low number in comparison to predominantly white institutions. I'm trying to recall, so I could be wrong with the percentage, but in comparison to predominantly white institutions, the endowment is just so much less, and this is why they're having financial issues in many of the HBCUs. I want to thank you both for coming on today to talk about HBCUs and the importance of HBCUs in the Black community, and also sharing your personal experiences of attending HBCUs. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in with us this week with Conversations with the Royal Empress, and we look forward to talking with you in our next episode.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Conversations with the Royal Empress. Tune in next week for another enlightening conversation. For more information on the Royal Empress, please visit the website royalempress.org. You can also follow the Royal Empress on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Conversations with the Royal Empress is a subsidiary of the Royal Empress organization. All rights reserved.